Hey everyone, today we're going to discuss the best and worst episodes of Breaking Bad. This is going to be a tough one, as Breaking Bad is a show I truly believe to have no conventionally bad episodes. When we talk about the worst, we're talking about the worst, so not necessarily bad, just the weakest of the series. The one rule I have for picking which episode is the best, and the worst, is that pilots are excluded. I personally don't think it's fair to judge a show by its pilot. Often in the first season, a show is finding its footing, so in the first episode, this applies even more, particularly as pilots are often filmed far before the rest of the first season is. So, no pilots. Although I think in this case it doesn't really apply for Breaking Bad, but regardless, no pilots for this series. Let's get started. Now, I feel the obvious worst episode to pick for Breaking Bad is Fly.
Exactly what kind of contaminant are we dealing with here? Fly.
When you think about bad or weak Breaking Bad episodes, you think Fly. I'm not going to deny that it's one of the weaker episodes of the series. It has the lowest score on IMDb, being the only episode of the entire series to dip below a score of 8. However, I feel this episode has a point, and it's at the very least a decent and highly focused character study on both Walt and Jesse. I'm also kind of a fan of bottle episodes. This bottle episode also exists because of the lab being built. It was so expensive that the budget had to be cut elsewhere, so it's kind of fun that they decided, hey, well, we paid so much for this to be built, may as well get the most out of it. It's an amazing set, and it's pretty cool to just see it explored, to be honest, having a long period of time spent there. This is also an episode where the two main characters properly reflect on the death of Jane, and the incoming death of Gale is foreshadowed, as they drink from Gale's coffee machine. It's also an episode where they spend about 20 minutes to half an hour trying to catch a fly.
When we say it's contamination, I'm thinking like an Ebola leak or something.
Ebola.
But hey, that part is still fun. After that, Jesse tells a relevant story, then a big moment comes when Walt begins questioning why he did this all. He only needed enough money to support his family when he was gone. His old self seems to come out whilst he's slightly drugged up by the sleeping pills Jesse gave him. He thinks there's a moment that was perfect for him to die, that has since gone, and he still believes there are certain words in a certain order to explain all of this.
There must exist certain words in a certain specific order that would explain all of this. I just can't ever seem to find them.
That's why we just sit down.
He then says the perfect time was when Jane died, or the day she died. He talks about talking to Jane's dad. This was the moment, he says. This was his turning point. This is honestly an amazing conversation. I think with the pills kicking in, he kind of realizes what he's done, and it's a moment where he's past the point of no return, and he's realized that he essentially killed someone else's daughter, who was innocent and who did deserve a chance to live. Despite the dark undertones of this moment, Jesse also gets some form of closure, even if it's dishonest.
It's not mine either. It's no one's fault. Not even hers.
Walt very nearly slips up and tells Jesse he killed Jane, or left her to die at least. So yeah, Fly I think is remembered poorly. Watch it again. There's genuinely an amazing conversation within the episode during the second half, and some fun stuff within the first. Really, I think that's where it gets its bad rap, as the first half is just a lot of silly nothingness really. This whole interaction is genuinely one of the most compelling from the series, where we get a quiet, long and thoughtful interaction between Walt and Jesse, before things go crazy in half and full measure at the end of the season. Seriously, give it a rewatch. The second half at least. Watch a clip on YouTube. So, what is the worst episode? The worst episode of Breaking Bad in my opinion is 38 Snub, Season 4, Episode 2. This is the episode right after the shocking Season 4 opener, Box Cutter, and essentially recounts the downtime after what happened at the lab, and the murder of Gale. It's an episode that leans in a bit too much into the idea of downtime and recovery, with many sequences that just aren't particularly interesting. Quick summary: Walt buys a 38 Snub from the gun dealer. Mike sits in a bar. Jesse gets a new sound system and invites Badger and Skinny Pete over for some drugs. There's some discussions of Left 4 Dead, Resident Evil, Call of Duty Zombies, that's pretty fun, Roomba, Party sequence. Walt practices firing his new gun. Hank with his minerals. Blue corundum. Talk of the car wash. Walt tells Skylar not to talk about the car wash. Jesse goes to work but tells his friends to keep the party going. Tyrus and Mike arrive instead of Gus at the lab. Jesse and Walt are never going to see Gus again. Skylar takes notes on the car wash. Hank walks to his bed. Uncut pizza. Andrea comes to Jesse's house. She asks about the money. Jesse waves goodbye to Brock. Walt goes to Gus's house. He gets a phone call. Go home, Walter. Hank buys more minerals. Skylar talks to Bogdan. Mike's at the bar. Saul's on TV. Walt comes in. Mike identifies his gun he bought at the start. Get me in a room with him, I'll do the rest, Walt says. Mike hits him. Credits. It's a good episode for memes. My main issue with this episode is largely that the following episode, Open House, essentially is the same episode, but better. It still holds focus on the downtime after Box Cutter, but it moves the plot forward, and the way the characters are dealing with their personal situations is simply more interesting. It would have been beneficial, I think, if these episodes had been merged, or the scenes were dispersed better between them, maybe each having more focus on one character, instead of a slow burn for everyone. These party sequences Jesse has are nothing short of boring in my opinion. I understand that this is how Jesse is dealing with the killing of Gale, trying to essentially numb himself, but it feels like it goes on just a bit too long, and needed to be a bit more varied. Again, in Open House we get some party scenes, but then we get some additional scenes, where we see some more emotion come out, as Jesse tries harder to distract himself, and in general more methods of distraction. It's a small change, but it's undeniably more interesting to watch. In Open House we also get a bit more of a conclusion to Skylar and Walt's conversation. We get some fun stuff with Saul, we get the car wash takeover, and it's just a ton more fun and a whole lot more active, I guess. We also get some far more interesting conversations and interactions between Jesse and Walt, and Saul, Skylar and Walt. Everything kind of goes somewhere in this episode, where the episode prior it was mostly set up. Even then, again, these two could probably be merged, or at the very least more of the payoff could have been moved over to 38 Snub. Marie in this episode has some fun sequences where she goes to open houses, and Hank finally gets his interest back when an officer brings him Gale's notebook. I feel 38 Snub's issue 2 is that a lot of possible tension just isn't that tense. Walt buying a gun and then seemingly preparing to actually shoot Gus in the lab before it turns out to be Victor is just odd, I thought. There's Walt being careful and cautious and paranoid and whatnot, and then there's Walt straight up planning to shoot Gus when he sees him again. It's clear as soon as Victor enters he knows Walter has a gun, which Mike later confirms. Going to his house and planning on shooting him is just a bad idea, and seems near out of character for Walt. Sure, he ran those two guys over and shot one, but that's a whole other situation. Two drug dealers and one literal drug kingpin. Like, this is a different situation going for the guy at the very top. Or near to it at least. So yeah, this seems out of character, even in his panicked and paranoid state. Then again, I suppose we totally have seen him go full measure just 2 episodes prior. The stuff with Hank and Marie is quite dreary to watch, and drags quite a bit, with scenes primarily focusing on Hank being rude to Marie, and wallowing in sorrow. It's totally understandable why he feels that way, but it doesn't feel enjoyable to watch. And there's far too many scenes of this happening within the same episode, that it feels like the point is run home a little too much. It's clear he's frustrated, again understandably so, but I feel the constant holding back of anger is just a little overdone here. The best part of the episode I thought was Skylar and Bogdan's conversation about selling and buying the car wash, with Bogdan's offer of $20 million for Walter White, and his reference to season 1 of how Walter quit his job back then. It's a fun throwback, but a very relevant and important reason behind the car wash's sale, particularly when Bogdan says Walter isn't man enough to come to him himself, which again is paid off in the next episode, Open House. Walt and Mike's final scene in the bar is a good one. It's a short conversation that ends in Walt being punched. It's satisfying in that regard, and it sets up the later conversation in season 5, when Mike complains about Walt's pride and ego, and how they had a good deal with Gus at the helm. I like these moments when we see Mike's otherwise cold and unclear emotion break through clearly when he's angry. So my choice for the worst episode of Breaking Bad is 38 Snub. It's impressive I feel that this is an episode I found to be the worst, because it's a great episode, and upon rewatch I genuinely enjoyed it. Again, for the most part. But that's just how it goes with this show. 38 Snub has an overabundance of downtime, with a lack of meaningful conversation. A good episode for humor though. When it comes to the best episode of Breaking Bad, it just seems like a bit of an unfair thing to decide on when episodes like Ozymandias exist. My personal dilemma is between Ozymandias and Felina. These are the two best episodes to me, and they are certainly helped by the fact that they occur at the end of the series, where not just seasonal payoffs are happening, but series payoffs are happening. I personally think it's a testament to the series' greatness that two of the highest rated episodes are some of the final ones. It shows that the series is wrapped up properly, and is really how things should be. Granite State, Half Measures, Full Measure, Dead Freight, Tahajali, Cruel Space, and many more are all worthwhile mentions. Full Measure I think comes the closest to taking that top spot, as it's almost like a mini Ozymandias in itself. It's like on the brink of that point at least. However, I still find that the sheer amount of payoff that Ozymandias and Felina provide is simply too much for any other episode to properly face up to them. These episodes are the point of the show that show us the downfall of Walter, and the resulting consequences of everything he has done throughout the series, or essentially the consequences of the series. I'm beating around the bush. I feel it quite simply just has to be Ozymandias. We begin the episode with a season 1 flashback to a scene where Walt still has hair, and the RV doesn't even have its bullet holes yet. Walt calls Skylar, and she believes his lie right away. Back in the present, Steve Gomez is dead, and Hank is injured on the ground. Walt tries to plead for Hank's life, but as Hank explains, that was never going to work, even after offering up his $80 million. They take Walt's money, leaving him a barrel of it. Walt points out Jesse, then tells him he watched Jane die. Jack and his men take Jesse, saying they plan on questioning him. Walt then leaves with his barrel. He then buys a truck from a man in the desert. Marie and Skylar have a confrontation at the car wash. We see Jesse in the compound, and his new cooking job for Jack. Skylar tells Walt Jr. about Walt's drug business. They go home to find Walt's new truck outside. Walt tells them to pack, ready to leave. Walt gets angry when they refuse. Skylar grabs a knife, they fight. Walt Jr. protects Skylar, and Walt leaves the house with Holly. Walt calls Skylar and the police listen in. He frames the event so that it seems like he threatened her to stay quiet, and everything was done by him, without her involvement. He tells them they will never see Hank again, then leaves Holly at a fire station. He gets picked up by the disappearer, and leaves Albuquerque. Nearly every actor gives their best performance in this episode. It's Anna Gunn's best, RJ Mitty's, Betsy Brandt's, Aaron Paul's, Bryan Cranston's, although for both of them that's highly debatable, given how many incredible moments there are throughout the series from them. Oh yeah, and Holly by the way. Genuinely amazing acting from this baby in that moment. The visuals are great, the choice of music is amazing, and the progression of events throughout the episode maintain a constant tension and rhythm, even though the episode begins with the death of what is arguably the show's hero. I feel there's not much else for me to add that everyone hasn't already analysed to the core. This is an episode that isn't just one of the best of the series, which is a feat in itself, but is considered one of the best episodes of TV ever. It's an episode that is so packed full of emotion, and is one I genuinely cannot watch without welling up at least a bit, due to its highly emotional moments. All of the series, this was the possibility of where things could go. After Walt's killing of Gus, his rise to being his own boss with his own empire, the name Heisenberg becoming well known, and feared within drug and criminal communities, he finally has his full. He finally faces the full consequences of his actions in one swift and crushing blow. He loses everything he has built over the past 5 seasons. It's truly amazing and is one of those episodes of TV I genuinely wish I could watch for the first time again, as overdone as that line is. It's true. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to let me know what you believe to be the best and worst episodes of Breaking Bad. Thanks for watching.